Hello, traveler. Thank you for choosing to spend this hour with me. Tonight, we're going to take a journey together, a slow, deliberate walk through one of the most imposing structures ever raised in Azeroth. But before we begin, I want you to find your comfort. Adjust your pillow. Feel the weight of your blanket. Let your shoulders drop, just a little. Unclench your jaw if you're holding tension there. There's nowhere you need to be right now. No urgency. No demand on your attention except this: to listen, to breathe, and to let yourself drift. Tonight, we travel north. Far, far to the north, beyond the forests of Lordaeron, beyond the ruined streets of Stratholme, beyond even the shores of the continent itself. We travel to Northrend, a land of endless winter, where the cold is not merely a temperature but a presence. A weight. A character in its own right. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the Dragonblight, where the frozen shore meets the restless sea. The wind here is constant. It does not gust or howl, it presses. It moves across the tundra like a slow, invisible river, and it smells of salt and ice and something older. Something that has no name. You are wrapped in furs. Thick, layered furs that creak slightly when you move. Beneath them, you wear wool and leather, but the cold still finds its way in. It touches your cheeks. It numbs the tip of your nose. Your breath rises in pale clouds, dissipating almost immediately in the wind. And ahead of you, far ahead, across miles of snow and stone and silence, you see it. Icecrown Citadel. Even from this distance, it dominates the horizon. It is not a fortress in the traditional sense. It does not sit upon the land. It erupts from it, as if the very bones of the earth were pulled upward by some immense, unnatural force and then carved into spires and walls and impossible angles. The structure is dark, darker than the snow around it, darker even than the storm clouds that seem to gather perpetually above its peaks. It is a silhouette, a shadow, a monument to ambition, to sorrow, and to a will that refused to die. We are going to enter that place tonight. But we will do so slowly. Methodically. We will not charge through its gates or race up its stairs. We will walk. We will observe. We will let the architecture speak to us in the language it knows best: silence, scale, and stone. So breathe with me now. In through your nose, slowly, deeply, feeling the cold air fill your lungs. Hold it for just a moment. And out through your mouth, letting everything go. Again. In. Hold. Out. Good. Now, let us begin at the beginning. The frozen foundation. To understand Icecrown Citadel, we must first understand what came before it. We must go back, not to the construction of the fortress itself, but to the moment when its foundation was laid. Not with stone, but with a fall. Imagine, if you will, a prison. Not a prison of bars or walls, but a prison of ice. A coffin, suspended in the frozen heart of a glacier, hidden deep within the roof of the world. Inside this prison, a helmet. A crown. And trapped within that crown, a soul, a consciousness torn between two identities, locked in eternal struggle, encased in cold so absolute that even thought itself became sluggish and slow. This was the frozen throne. It was not built by mortal hands. It was crafted by the Burning Legion, by the Dreadlord Kil'jaeden himself, as a cage for the fallen orc shaman Najul. Najul, who had betrayed his people. Najul, who had been betrayed in turn. Najul, who was shattered, tortured, and remade into something new, the Lich King. A being of pure necromantic will, designed to serve the Legion's invasion of Azeroth by raising an army of the dead. But the prison was not perfect. The frozen throne was cast down from the twisting nether like a meteor, a comet of dark ice that screamed through the sky and buried itself in the highest peaks of Northrend. The impact sent shockwaves through the glacier. Fissures formed. Cracks spiderwebbed through the ice. And through those cracks, the Lich King's power began to leak, slowly at first, then faster, spreading like frost across glass. 4 years, centuries, perhaps, the frozen throne sat undisturbed. The Nerubians, the ancient spider kingdom that dwelled beneath the ice, felt its presence. They knew something had fallen into their domain. They sent scouts. They sent warriors. And they never returned. The Lich King's influence grew. From his prison, he reached out. He touched the minds of the living. He whispered to the dead. He pulled at the threads of fate and flesh, weaving them into something new. An army. A plague. A vision of a world united under one will, a world without war, without suffering, without the chaos of life itself. And then, one day, the prison received a visitor. A human. A paladin. A prince. Arthas Menethil. You know this story, perhaps. You know how the prince fell. How he took up the cursed runeblade Frostmourne, believing it would save his people. How the sword devoured his soul piece by piece, until nothing remained but ambition and the whisper of the Lich King's voice in his mind. How he returned to Lordaeron and murdered his father. How he led the Scourge across the eastern kingdoms, burning and raising and spreading death like a gardener sowing seeds. But what you may not fully grasp is this: Arthas was called. Every step of his journey north was not a choice, but a compulsion. The Lich King's voice was a hook, and Arthas was the fish, dragged through dark water toward an inevitable end. When Arthas finally reached the frozen throne, he was no longer entirely himself. He had given up everything, his kingdom, his love, his humanity, for power. And when he shattered the ice that encased the helm of domination and placed it upon his head, the merger was complete. 2 souls. 1 throne. The Lich King was reborn, stronger, more focused, with a mortal body to anchor him to the physical world. And in that moment, as Arthas's consciousness merged with Najul's, the Lich King looked out across Northrend and saw what needed to be done. He needed a seat of power. Not a hidden prison in a glacier, but a fortress. A structure that would inspire awe and terror in equal measure. A place from which he could command his legions, conduct his experiments, and, most importantly, be seen. And so, the construction began. The glacier itself became the foundation. The Lich King did not merely build on the ice, he built from it. Using his necromantic power, he shaped the frozen landscape, pulling columns of ice upward like clay on a potter's wheel. He commanded his geomancers and frost WYMs to carve tunnels and halls deep into the permafrost, creating a labyrinthine undercroft that would serve as both dungeon and laboratory. But ice alone was not enough. Ice melts. Ice cracks. Ice is, ultimately, temporary. The Lich King needed something stronger. Something eternal. Something that reflected the dark nature of his reign. He needed Saronite. Now, Saronite is not a common substance. It is not found in veins like iron or copper. It does not occur naturally in the way that stone or metal does. Saronite is blood. Specifically, it is the blood of Yogg-Saron, the old god imprisoned deep beneath Uldua, whose corruption seeps through the earth like a slow poison, hardening into a dark, almost living metal. The Lich King's servants mined it. They pulled it from the ground in great slabs, each piece whispering in voices too low to hear but too persistent to ignore. They hauled it across the tundra on sleds pulled by frost WYMs and skeletal mammoths. And piece by piece, they began to build. Saronite is cold to the touch. Colder than steel. Colder than ice. It draws heat from the air around it, creating a faint, perpetual mist wherever it is exposed. It is black, but not the black of charcoal or night. It is the black of deep water, of the space between stars. It reflects light, but distorts it, so that looking at a Saronite wall is like looking into a mirror that shows you something almost yourself, but not quite. And the citadel rose. Slowly. Methodically. Over years. The outer walls were raised first, massive, sloping ramparts that leaned inward, creating the impression that the fortress was hunching over, guarding something precious. Towers were erected, each one taller than the last, spiraling upward in asymmetrical patterns that defied conventional architecture. Gates were forged, immense doors of iron and Saronite, tall enough that a giant could walk through them without bowing. And at the center, the spire. The spire of Icecrown Citadel is not merely tall. It is defiant. It punches upward through the clouds, through the wind, through the snow, until it reaches a place where the air is thin and still and the stars are visible even in daylight. At its peak, the frozen throne itself, relocated from the glacier and enshrined in open air, exposed to the sky like a declaration. This is my seat. This is my power. Come, if you dare. The construction was not supervised by mortal architects. There were no blueprints. No engineers debating load-bearing supports or aesthetic balance. The citadel was willed into being, shaped by necromancy and vision and an intelligence that thought in centuries rather than seasons. And when it was finished, when the last tower was capped and the last gate was sealed, the Lich King stood at the base of his creation and looked up. And he was satisfied. A long pause. The wind continues, soft and distant. Now, traveler, before we step inside, take a moment to picture it fully. You are standing at the base of Icecrown Citadel. The wind has died down. The snow falls in slow, lazy spirals, each flake taking its time to reach the ground. The fortress looms above you, impossibly tall, impossibly dark. The walls are smooth in some places, jagged in others, as if the stone is still deciding what shape it wants to hold. There is no sound. No birds. No voices. Just the faint hum of something deep and old and patient. You take a breath. It hurts a little, the cold biting at your lungs. And then, you step forward. Toward the gate. Toward the citadel. Toward the slow, inevitable pull of the frozen throne. Before we cross the threshold into Icecrown Citadel itself, we must take time to understand the material from which it is built. Because Saronite is not merely a building material. It is not inert. It is not neutral. To walk through halls of Saronite is to walk through a substance that remembers. That watches. That carries within it the dreams and madness of an old god. So let us slow down even further. Let us examine this metal, this blood made solid, with the attention it demands. The anatomy of Saronite. Saronite begins as liquid. Deep beneath the surface of Northrend, in caverns that have never seen light, the blood of Yogg-Saron seeps from cracks in ancient stone. It is not red, this blood. It is black, with a faint iridescence, like oil on water, shifting between purple and green and blue depending on the angle of observation. It moves slowly, pooling in depressions, flowing down channels carved by time and pressure. When exposed to air, it begins to harden. Not quickly. Not like wax cooling or metal solidifying in a mold. The transformation takes hours, sometimes days. The liquid thickens first, becoming viscous, tar-like. It clings to surfaces. It resists motion. And then, gradually, it becomes solid, but never entirely loses its sense of fluidity. Even in its hardened state, Saronite seems to retain a memory of movement, as if it might, at any moment, flow again. The color deepens as it hardens. The iridescence fades, replaced by a matte black so complete that it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. But look closely, step near and bring a torch or a lantern, and you'll see that this is not quite true. Saronite does reflect, but what it shows you is distorted. Elongated. Shadows move across its surface even when nothing passes in front of it. Faces appear in the grain, subtle, almost imperceptible, but there. Watching. Touch it, and the cold is immediate. Not the cold of ice, which stings and numbs. This is a deeper cold. A cold that travels up your arm and settles in your chest. A cold that makes you think of deep water. Of burial. Of the space beneath the earth where light has never reached and never will. The miners who extracted Saronite from Northrend's depths did not last long. The Lich King, of course, was immune to such corruption. Or perhaps immune is the wrong word. Perhaps it is more accurate to say that he and the Saronite understood each other. Two fragments of a larger darkness, recognizing kinship. The whispers that drove mortals mad were, to him, merely ambient noise. Background music. He could work with Saronite for hours, days, years, shaping it with necromantic force and his own gauntleted hands, and feel nothing but a cold, satisfied purpose. He used it everywhere. The outer walls of Icecrown Citadel are layered, ice on the outside, providing bulk and insulation, but reinforced within by frameworks of Saronite. The towers are capped with it. The gates are bound with it. And the interior, the halls and chambers and throne rooms we will soon walk through, are paneled, floored, and vaulted almost entirely in the black metal. This creates an atmosphere. Step inside Icecrown Citadel, and the temperature drops, not because the air is colder, but because the Saronite is pulling the warmth from you. Your breath comes faster. Your heart beats a little quicker, working harder to keep your blood moving. And beneath the physical sensation, there is the psychological weight. You are surrounded by the blood of a god. A sleeping god, yes. A dreaming god. But a god nonetheless. And some part of you, the ancient, animal part that still remembers what it was like to be prey, knows this. Knows that you are inside something living. That the walls are watching. That every step you take is observed, recorded, remembered. This is why so few who entered Icecrown Citadel during the Lich King's reign ever left. It was not merely the Scourge that killed them. It was the place itself. Now, let us approach the gate. You have been walking for some time now. The journey from the edge of Icecrown Glacier to the citadel proper is longer than it appears from a distance. The scale of the fortress tricks the eye. What looks like it might be a mile away is actually 3, or 5, or more. The snow underfoot is deep in places, shallow in others, packed hard by the constant wind. There are no trees here. No vegetation of any kind. Just snow, and stone, and the occasional outcropping of dark rock that juts from the ground like broken teeth. And bones. So many bones. They are half buried in the drifts, revealed and then concealed again as the wind shifts the snow. Ribs. Femurs. Skulls, some human, some not. Some still have scraps of frozen flesh clinging to them. Others are ancient, bleached white by time and cold. You do not stop to examine them. There are too many. To acknowledge each one would take hours, days. And besides, they are not a mystery. You know what they are. The remains of those who came before. Crusaders. Heroes. Soldiers. Adventurers. All who sought to challenge the Lich King, to bring justice or vengeance or simply to test themselves against the greatest threat Azeroth had ever known. They did not succeed. Their bones joined the snow, becoming part of the landscape, and the citadel looms above them, indifferent. As you draw closer, details begin to resolve. The outer wall is taller than you imagined. 60 feet? 80? It is difficult to judge. The perspective shifts as you approach, as if the fortress is adjusting itself, deciding how large it wants to appear. The surface of the wall is not smooth. It is textured, patterns carved or molded into the ice and Saronite that resemble organic forms. Veins. Roots. The branching structures of frozen lungs. There are no windows in the outer wall. Or rather, there are openings, but they are not windows in any conventional sense. They are more like wounds, irregular gaps in the stone, too dark to see through, exhaling a faint mist that rises and dissipates in the wind. From some of these openings, you hear sounds. Distant. Muffled. The clank of metal on metal. A low, rhythmic pounding. And once, just once, something that might have been a scream, cut short. You do not investigate. You continue toward the gate. The gate is immense. 2 doors, each 150 feet tall and 20 feet wide, made of dark iron reinforced with bands of Saronite. They are adorned with reliefs, scenes carved into the metal with obsessive detail. Armies marching. Cities burning. Figures kneeling before a crowned silhouette. And at the center of each door, a face, larger than life, eyes closed, expression serene. Artes. No. Not Artes. The Lich King. The distinction is important. The face on the door is not the young prince who fell to corruption. It is something colder. More refined. The features are similar, yes, but stripped of humanity. Idealized. Perfected. This is the face of a god king, not a man. You stand before the gate for a long moment. It does not open. There are no guards. No challenge. No voice demanding to know your business. Just silence, and the wind, and the faint hum of the Saronite in the walls. And then, slowly, so slowly that at first you think you are imagining it, the doors begin to move. They do not swing outward. They sink backward, retreating into the walls as if the stone itself is swallowing them. There is a sound, a deep, grinding rumble that you feel in your bones more than hear with your ears. Snow falls from the top of the gate, disturbed by the movement, and a blast of air rushes out from the interior. Cold air. Colder than the wind outside. Colder than the snow. Air that has been trapped inside the citadel for years, circulating through halls of Saronite and ice, absorbing the chill and the whispers and the weight of countless deaths. You breathe it in. And you step forward. Into the darkness. The threshold. There is a moment, just a moment, when you are standing exactly on the threshold. 1 foot outside, 1 foot inside. The wind at your back. The darkness ahead. This is the point of no return. Not literally, of course. You could turn around. You could walk back across the snow, past the bones, past the outcropping stones, back to the relative warmth of a camp or a town or wherever it is you came from. But you won't. Because you've come this far. Because the Citadel has called you, just as it called Artes, just as it calls everyone who comes within sight of its spires. Not with words. Not with promises. But with simple, undeniable presence. It is here. You are here. And so, you cross. The entrance hall is vast. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dimness. There is light, but it is not warm. It comes from braziers set into the walls, massive iron bowls filled with a pale, blue-green flame that flickers without heat. Necromantic fire. Fueled not by wood or oil, but by magic. By death. The floor beneath your feet is smooth. Polished Saronite, reflecting the cold fire in distorted ripples. Your footsteps echo, each one sharp and clear, repeating into the distance before fading into silence. The ceiling is high. So high that you cannot see it clearly. It vanishes into shadow, supported by columns that rise like the trunks of petrified trees. Between the columns, chains hang, some with cages attached, empty now, swaying slightly in an unfelt breeze. Others simply dangle, ending in hooks or manacles or nothing at all. The walls are carved. Every surface is decorated. No, not decorated. Inscribed. Covered in runes, sigils, and glyphs in a script you do not recognize. They glow faintly, pulsing in slow, irregular rhythms, as if breathing. Some are necromantic in origin. You recognize the shapes, even if you cannot read the words. Others are older. Pre-human. Pre-elf. Languages from the time of the Black Empire, when the old gods ruled and the world was still young and soft. You walk slowly. There is no reason to hurry. Ahead, the hall splits. 3 archways, each identical, each leading deeper into the Citadel. No signs. No indicators. The Lich King does not believe in guiding his guests. If you are here, you either know where you are going, or you are meant to wander. To explore. To become lost in the labyrinth of his making. You choose the center path. Not for any particular reason. It simply feels right. And as you pass beneath the arch, you feel the temperature drop again. Impossibly, it drops further, and the hum of the Saronite grows louder. Not loud enough to be painful. Just loud enough to remind you. You are inside now. Inside the Citadel. Inside the blood of a god. And the only way forward is deeper. You have crossed the threshold. You have felt the weight of Saronite settle around you like a cloak. And now, we descend, or rather, we proceed inward, through the levels of the lower spire, where the architecture begins to reveal the Lich King's true vision. This is not a fortress designed for defense. Not truly. Oh, there are defenses, yes. Walls and gates and choke points that could hold back an army. But that is not the purpose of these halls. The purpose is something else entirely. Something more subtle. More psychological. Icecrown Citadel was built to transform. Everyone who enters is meant to be changed by the experience. Tested. Broken down. Remade. The halls themselves are the first test, long, winding corridors that seem to lead nowhere and everywhere at once. The cold is the second test, not just physical cold, but the cold of isolation, of being utterly alone in a place that was never meant for the living. And the third test is the waiting. Because nothing happens quickly here. So let us walk. Slowly. Methodically. Let us observe what the Lich King has built, one chamber at a time. The lower galleries. The corridor you have chosen extends forward into shadow. The ceiling here is lower than in the entrance hall, perhaps 30 feet high instead of 100. This creates a different quality of space. More intimate. More oppressive. The walls lean inward slightly, creating the impression that the passage is narrowing as you move through it, though when you glance back, it appears to be the same width it always was. The floor is still Saronite, but here it has been textured. Grooves have been cut into the metal in geometric patterns, concentric circles, interlocking spirals, angular lines that intersect and diverge with mathematical precision. They serve no functional purpose that you can discern. They are simply there. Patterns for the sake of pattern. Or perhaps they mean something to the Lich King. Perhaps they are another language, another layer of inscription that only he can read. Every 20 paces or so, there is an alcove. These alcoves are set into the walls at regular intervals, each one exactly the same size, 10 feet wide, 15 feet deep, 12 feet high. Inside each alcove stands a statue. Not a statue in the traditional sense. A frozen figure. Men and women, armored and armed, caught in various poses. Some are standing at attention, weapons held across their chests. Others are mid-stride, as if they were walking when they were suddenly arrested in place. Still others are on their knees, heads bowed, hands clasped in prayer or supplication. They are not carved from stone. They are actual people, encased in eyes so clear and perfect that you can see every detail. The texture of their skin. The individual links of their chainmail. The expression on their faces, and oh, the expressions. Some look peaceful. Resigned. As if they accepted their fate. But most look terrified. Eyes wide. Mouths open in silent screams. Frozen in the moment of their death, or perhaps in the moment just before it. You pass by them slowly. One after another after another. There are dozens. Hundreds, perhaps, if this corridor extends as far as it seems to. Each one a person who once had a name, a history, a life. Crusaders, most likely. Members of the Argent Crusade or the Knights of the Ebon Blade who came to challenge the Lich King and were captured. Preserved. Put on display. Not as a warning. Warnings imply that the Lich King cares whether others attempt to challenge him. No, these figures are displayed for a different reason. They are trophies. Proof of conquest. Proof of inevitability. Proof that all who come here eventually kneel, one way or another. You do not linger by any single figure. To do so feels disrespectful. Or perhaps it feels dangerous, as if staring too long might somehow link you to them, might make the ice reach out and claim you as well. So you keep walking. And the corridor continues. After what feels like 15 minutes, though time is difficult to judge here, in this place where nothing changes and the light remains constant, the corridor opens into a larger space. A gallery. The room is circular, perhaps 200 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling that rises into shadow. Around the perimeter of the room, more alcoves. More frozen figures. But here, they are larger. These are not individual soldiers. These are groups. Entire squads, frozen together in tableaus that suggest stories. Here, 5 knights, arranged in a defensive circle, weapons pointed outward, as if they were fighting something when the ice took them. There, a priest and a mage, the priest's hand raised in blessing, the mage's hands wreathed in half-formed fire that will never ignite. And there, in the largest alcove, a scene that stops you in your tracks. A paladin, tall, broad-shouldered, his armor adorned with the sigil of the silver hand, kneeling before a figure in dark plate armor. The paladin's head is bowed. His sword lies on the ground before him. And the figure in dark armor, unmistakably the Lich King, though this is a statue, not the man himself, has one gauntleted hand resting on the paladin's head. Almost gently. Almost like a benediction. You stare at this tableau for a long time. Trying to understand what it represents. Surrender? Conversion? Or something else? Some moment of dark intimacy between the Lich King and one of his most worthy opponents, frozen here for eternity. You do not know. And the Citadel does not offer answers. In the center of the gallery, there is a staircase. Not a grand staircase. Not the sweeping, dramatic kind you might expect in a fortress of this scale. This is a simple, utilitarian spiral stair, carved from black stone, descending down into the floor. Down. Always down. You approach the stairs and look into the opening. The light from the necromantic braziers does not penetrate far. After the first few turns of the spiral, there is only darkness. And from that darkness, a sound. Faint. Rhythmic. Dripping. Water? Or something else? You place your hand on the cold stone railing and begin to descend. The Forge of Souls. The stairs go down for a long time. Long enough that your legs begin to ache. Long enough that you lose count of the turns. The temperature drops with each step, not dramatically, but steadily, incrementally, so that by the time you reach the bottom, your breath is coming in thick clouds and frost has formed on your eyebrows and the fur trim of your cloak. The staircase opens into a chamber. No, chamber is too small a word. This is a foundry. The space is enormous. The ceiling is at least 100 feet above you, supported by columns of Saronite so thick that 10 men holding hands could not encircle one. The floor is uneven, part stone, part metal, part ice, and crisscrossed with channels that glow with a dull, orange light. Not fire. Not exactly. Something that resembles fire, but burns colder. Necromantic energy, perhaps, or some alchemical mixture that the Lich King's engineers have devised. The channels carry this substance throughout the chamber, feeding it into large, basin-like structures that bubble and hiss and release steam that smells faintly of sulfur and rot. This is where the weapons are made. Where the armor is forged. Where the Scourge's endless war machine is supplied. You walk along a raised platform that circles the chamber, giving you a view of the work below. And there, laboring in the dim glow, are the workers. Undead, of course. Skeletal blacksmiths, their bones blackened by exposure to heat and magic, hammer away at anvils with mechanical precision. They do not tire. They do not pause. They simply work, hour after hour, day after day, producing swords and spears and armor in quantities that no living workforce could ever match. And overseeing them, floating above the floor on currents of dark magic, are the soul forgers. Wraith-like entities, their forms barely corporeal, shifting between solid and transparent moment by moment. They do not speak, but you can feel their attention. They are aware of you. They are watching, calculating, deciding whether you are a threat or simply another resource to be processed. You keep moving. You do not want to draw their scrutiny. At the far end of the chamber, there is another archway. This one is different from the others you have seen. It is smaller, almost human-sized, and flanked by two statues, not frozen people, but actual carved stone statues. Gargoyles, wings folded, claws resting on the floor, heads bowed. They do not move as you approach. But their eyes, glowing faintly with blue light, track your movement. You pass between them, feeling their gaze on your back, and enter a narrow corridor. The walls here are smooth, polished, reflective. You can see yourself in the Saronite, or rather, you can see a version of yourself. The reflection is not quite right. The proportions are slightly off. Your face is thinner, paler. Your eyes are darker. And behind you, in the reflection, there are shapes. Shadows. Figures that are not there when you turn to look. You do not look for long. You keep your eyes forward and keep walking. The halls of reflection. The corridor eventually widens, opens, transforms into something else entirely. A hall. But not like the entrance hall. This space is different. Quieter. More solemn. The hall of reflection. It is long and relatively narrow, perhaps 50 feet wide, but stretching forward for what looks like a quarter mile. The floor is ice. Not Saronite, but pure, clear ice, polished to a mirror finish. And beneath the ice, you can see things. Frozen moments. Memories. Look down, and you see a battlefield. Soldiers locked in combat, mid-swing, mid-charge, mid-fall. The detail is extraordinary. You can see the mud on their boots. The fear in their eyes. The blood spraying from wounds. Take 3 steps forward, and the scene changes. Now it is a city. Lordaeron, perhaps, or Stratholm. Buildings burning. People fleeing. And there, in the center of the scene, a figure in silver armor, sword raised, cutting down those who cannot run fast enough. 3 more steps. A throne room. A king on his throne. And a son, approaching with a sword. The ice beneath your feet is a record. A chronicle. The Lich King's history, preserved in frozen crystal, every moment of betrayal and conquest and transformation laid out for those who walk this hall to witness. You move slowly. Each step reveals a new scene. Some you recognize, famous battles, well-known atrocities. Others are obscure. Personal. Moments that only the Lich King himself would remember. A conversation with a mentor. A kindness shown by a servant. A quiet moment in a garden, before everything changed. And as you walk, you realize something. The scenes are not random. They are arranged chronologically. You are walking through a life. From beginning to end. From the idealistic prince to the monster on the throne. And at the far end of the hall, illuminated by a single beam of pale light from some unseen source above, there is a mirror. Not a frozen scene beneath the floor. An actual mirror. Floor to ceiling. Framed in dark wood, ancient and ornate. You stop before it. And you look. Your reflection looks back. But again, it is not quite right. The face is yours, but older. Tired. The eyes are hollow. The skin is pale, almost translucent. And there is something else, something in the posture, in the set of the shoulders, in the way the reflected figure holds itself. Resignation. Defeat. Acceptance. This is not who you are. This is who you could be. Who you will be, if you stay here long enough. If you walk these halls, breathe this air, absorb the whispers of the Saronite and the weight of the Lich King's will. This is what Icecrown Citadel does. It shows you your end. And it waits to see if you will turn away, or step forward and embrace it. You stand before the mirror for a long time. How long, you cannot say. Time moves strangely here. Seconds stretch. Minutes compress. The hum of the Saronite continues, steady and patient, and somewhere far above, or far below, or far away, or very close, you hear a sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Armored. Measured. Coming closer. You do not see who they belong to. But you know. Deep in your bones, in the part of you that the Citadel has already started to claim, you know. And so you turn from the mirror. And you continue walking. Deeper into the Citadel. Deeper into the cold, you have walked through memory. You have seen the frozen past beneath your feet. You have looked into the mirror and glimpsed a possible future. And now, we ascend. Not to the frozen throne, not yet. That pinnacle awaits, patient and eternal. But first, we must explore the wings of Icecrown Citadel. The specialized chambers. The laboratories and sanctums where the Lich King's most devoted servants carried out his vision. Because the Citadel is not merely a fortress or a palace. It is a workshop. A place of experimentation and transformation, where the boundaries between life and death, between flesh and magic, between individual will and collective purpose, are tested and dissolved. We begin in the East Wing. The Plague Works. Ascending to the Plague Works. The Hall of Reflection ends at another archway. This one is wider than the last, its frame carved with intricate patterns that seem to writhe and shift when you're not looking directly at them. Pass through, and you find yourself at the base of a wide, ascending ramp. Not stairs this time. A ramp. Broad enough for a dozen people to walk abreast, its surface slightly rough to provide traction. The angle of ascent is gentle. This is not a climb that will exhaust you, but one that will take time. And time, as you are learning, is the Citadel's favorite currency. The walls alongside the ramp are different here. Not Saronite alone, but a combination of materials. Ice, yes. Black metal, yes. But also something organic. Something that might once have been wood, or bone, or some fusion of the two. The surface is ridged, fibrous, and in places it appears almost to breathe, expanding slightly, contracting, in rhythm with the ever-present hum. You place your hand on this surface as you walk. It is warmer than the Saronite. Not warm, exactly, nothing in this place is truly warm, but less aggressively cold. Body temperature, perhaps. Or what body temperature might be if the body in question had been dead for several days. You pull your hand away. Continue climbing. The ramp curves gently to the left, spiraling upward through the interior of the Citadel. There are no windows, no views of the outside world. Just the walls, the floor, the distant ceiling lost in shadow. And every 50 feet or so, a door. These doors are smaller than the great gates you passed through earlier. Human-sized. Made of dark wood reinforced with iron bands. Each one is slightly ajar, open just wide enough that you could peer through if you chose. You do not choose. You can hear what lies beyond those doors. Sounds that drift out into the corridor like smoke. The wet, tearing sound of flesh being separated from bone. The hiss of chemicals. The low, bubbling murmur of something organic dissolving in acid. And once, briefly, a voice, thin and high and desperate, crying out in a language you don't understand, then cutting off abruptly. You keep walking. You keep your eyes forward. Because you know what those rooms contain. You know what happens in the workshops of the Scourge. And there is nothing to be gained by witnessing it directly. The imagination is sufficient. More than sufficient. After what feels like 20 minutes of steady climbing, though again, time is unreliable here, the ramp levels out. You have reached the plague works proper. The corridor opens into a vast chamber, and immediately, you notice the smell. Not rot, precisely. Not decay in the traditional sense. This is something else. Something chemical. Astringent and sharp, it burns the inside of your nose and makes your eyes water. Formaldehyde, perhaps. Or some necromantic equivalent. Mixed with other scents, copper, sulfur, and underneath it all, a sickly-sweet note that might be putrefaction or might be some kind of preservative. The chamber is a laboratory. But a laboratory on a scale that beggars belief. The space is circular, easily 500 feet across, with the ceiling supported by massive columns that branch at the top like the limbs of leafless trees. Between these columns, workstations have been erected, long tables covered with equipment. Beakers and vials and alembics. Surgical tools laid out in neat rows. Jars filled with specimens floating in cloudy liquid. And everywhere, the materials of the plague. Vats of green slime that bubble constantly, releasing vapor that hangs in the air like fog. Racks of organs, hearts, lungs, livers, suspended on hooks, connected by tubes through which various fluids flow. And corpses. So many corpses. They lie on tables, strapped down, opened up, their insides exposed to the cold air. Some are fresh, or as fresh as anything can be in a place like this. Their skin still has color. Their eyes, though glassy, still retain some semblance of life. Others are old. Desiccated. Reduced to leather and bone. And a few are something in between, partially decomposed, yet clearly still functional, their muscles twitching, their fingers flexing, responding to stimuli you cannot see. Moving among these tables are the workers. The plague scientists. They are undead, of course. Some are skeletal, their bones wrapped in tattered robes stained with chemicals. Others retain more of their flesh, though it is grey and mottled, stretched tight over their skulls, their eyes replaced by dim, glowing points of sickly green light. They work in silence, each absorbed in their individual tasks, moving with the jerky precision of puppets whose strings are pulled by an unseen master. And in the center of the chamber, supervising it all, is Professor Putricide. You have heard of him. Everyone who has any knowledge of the Scourge has heard of him. A genius. A madman. The Lich King's chief alchemist and disease engineer, responsible for some of the most virulent plagues ever unleashed upon Azeroth. He stands, or rather, slouches, atop a raised platform, his body bloated and misshapen, his limbs too long, his head too large. He wears a stained apron and thick gloves, and his face is hidden behind a complex apparatus of tubes and filters that bubble and hiss with each breath. He is muttering to himself. Even from this distance, you can hear it. A constant stream of words and half-words, notes and calculations and observations spoken in a cheerful, sing-song tone that is utterly at odds with the horror of his surroundings. Yes, fascinating, the rate of cellular degradation in the presence of Ica is approximately, oh, but wait, if we introduce a catalyst, perhaps arcane dust, no, too volatile, better to use, him, yes, that might work, but we'll need fresh subjects, always need fresh subjects, never enough, never enough. You do not approach. You skirt the edge of the chamber, keeping to the shadows between the columns, moving as quietly as possible. The plague scientists do not look up from their work. Putricide does not turn in your direction. You are, for the moment, beneath their notice. And you are grateful for that. Along the far wall of the chamber, there are tanks. Enormous glass cylinders, 20 feet tall and 10 feet in diameter, filled with viscous green fluid. And floating in that fluid, suspended, motionless, are things. Abominations in various stages of construction. Some are nearly complete. You can see the patchwork of different body parts stitched together, arms from one corpse, legs from another, a torso that might have belonged to an ogre, all combined into a single, monstrous form. Their eyes are closed. Their mouths hang slack. They are waiting. Waiting to be completed. Waiting to be awakened. Others are only partially assembled. A torso with no head. A collection of limbs with no body to attach them to. Organs floating freely, connected by threads of magical energy that pulse and glow in the murky liquid. And one tank, the largest, positioned at the very center of the row, contains something different. You stop before it. Peer into the green gloom. And see wings. Enormous wings, leathery and tattered, spread wide inside the tank. Attached to a body that is humanoid in shape but far too large, far too powerful. The chest is broad, the arms thick with muscle and bone and metal reinforcement. The head is bowed, chin resting on chest, face hidden. A nascent frost wym, perhaps. Or something worse. Something putricide is building to order, according to specifications known only to him and his dark master. You do not linger. You turn away from the tanks, from the tables, from the hissing vats and muttering scientists, and you make your way to the exit on the far side of the chamber. Another archway. Another corridor. And the smell of the plague works fades behind you, replaced gradually by something else. Something metallic. And faintly sweet. The smell of blood. The Crimson Hall. The corridor between the plague works and the next wing is mercifully short. Perhaps 100 feet. The walls here are bare stone, no carvings, no decorations, no frozen figures in alcoves. Just rough-hewn rock, dark and cold, with moisture seeping through in places and freezing into delicate ice formations that hang like crystalline curtains. The floor slopes downward slightly. You descend. And ahead, you see light. Not the cold blue-green of necromantic fire, but something warmer. Redder. The light of torches, perhaps. Or something that burns with a different kind of hunger. You emerge into a hall that takes your breath away. Not because of its size, though it is large, easily 300 feet long and 100 wide, but because of its opulence. This is not a laboratory. Not a foundry. Not a chamber of utilitarian horror. This is a throne room. Or rather, it is a great hall in the style of the old Lordaeron nobility. High vaulted ceilings supported by graceful columns. A floor of polished marble, red marble, shot through with veins of black and gold. And along the walls, hanging from iron sconces, torches that burn with actual flame, casting warm, dancing shadows across the space. But the warmth is an illusion. The temperature here is no higher than anywhere else in the citadel. The flames provide light, but no heat. And the red of the marble is not naturally occurring stone. It is blood. Crystallized blood, infused into the very structure of the floor and walls, giving everything a crimson hue that shifts and deepens as you move. This is the domain of the Sanlane. The Blood Princes. In life, they were elves. High elves, once proud citizens of Quel'Thalas, who served their kingdom with distinction. Magisters and warriors and nobles, each one a master of magic or blade or both. In death, they became something else. The Lich King raised them not as mindless undead, but as dark-fallen, vampiric entities, retaining their intelligence, their memories, their sense of self, but twisted. Reshaped. Their hunger for arcane magic transformed into a hunger for blood. Their pride and ambition magnified, stripped of any moral constraint. And he gave them this hall. Their own domain within his citadel. A place where they could hold court, conduct their own experiments, and indulge their appetites. You walk slowly down the center of the hall. Your footsteps echo on the marble, sharp and clear. On either side of you, between the columns, there are alcoves. And in those alcoves, figures stand. Not frozen this time. Not statues. These are the blood servants. Mortals, or former mortals, who have been bound to the Sanlane through blood magic. They stand perfectly still, eyes open but unseeing, dressed in tattered finery that might once have been elegant but is now stained and torn. Their skin is pale, almost translucent, and you can see the veins beneath, dark, prominent, as if the blood within has thickened and slowed. They do not move as you pass. But you can feel their awareness. They are not truly comatose. They are waiting, held in stasis by their master's will, ready to be called upon when needed, as servants, as soldiers, or as sustenance. You avert your eyes and continue walking. At the far end of the hall, there is a throne. Not the frozen throne that still waits at the citadel's pinnacle. This is a lesser throne, but no less impressive. Carved from a single piece of red crystal, bloodstone, perhaps, or some rarer gem, it rises 15 feet high, its back shaped like the spread wings of a bat. And seated upon it is one of the Blood Princes. You stop. The distance between you and the throne is perhaps 50 feet. Far enough that you could, perhaps, turn and flee. Close enough that you can see him clearly. He is tall, taller than any living elf you have ever seen, his frame stretched and elongated by undeath. His skin is the color of old parchment, his hair long and black and flowing over his shoulders like ink. His armor is ornate, black plate chased with gold, form-fitting, ceremonial rather than practical. And his eyes are red. Not the pale pink of albinism, or the bloodshot red of exhaustion. Crimson. Glowing. Like embers in a dying fire. He is looking at you. Has been looking at you, perhaps, since you entered the hall. And now he speaks. His voice is smooth. Cultured. The accent is Thalassian, but archaic, the way elves spoke centuries ago, before the fall of Quel'Thalas, when they still believed themselves immortal. How curious, he says. A visitor. And unannounced. You do not respond. What could you say? He tilts his head, studying you the way a scholar might study an interesting specimen. Not with hostility. Not with hunger, at least, not immediate hunger. With curiosity. You have walked far, he continues. Through the galleries. Through the forges. Through Putricide's charming little workshop. A slight smile. And now you have come to my hall. Do you seek something? Or are you merely lost? Still, you say nothing. The Blood Prince's smile widens slightly. Ah, the silent type. How refreshing. So many who come here insist on making proclamations. I am here to slay the Lich King. I will avenge my fallen brothers. Justice will be done. He waves a hand dismissively. Tedious. All of them. They never last long. He rises from his throne. The movement is fluid, graceful, almost hypnotic. He descends the steps slowly, each footfall silent on the marble, and begins to walk toward you. You tense. Every instinct screams at you to run. To turn and flee back the way you came. But you do not. You cannot. Because running would be futile. Because this is a dream, or a memory, or a vision, and in dreams, you cannot outrun what pursues you. So you stand. And wait. He stops 10 feet away. Close enough that you can see the details of his face. The sharp angles of his cheekbones. The faint tracery of veins beneath his skin. The way his lips are slightly darker than the rest of his face, stained perhaps by centuries of feeding. You are not afraid, he observes. Or you hide it well. Either way, I approve. He circles you slowly, appraising. The Lich King has many servants. Many champions. Many souls bound to his will. But he is always looking for more. Those with potential. Those who might be worth the effort of conversion. He pauses. Are you such a one, I wonder? You feel his gaze on you. Not just his eyes, but his presence. A pressure, subtle but insistent, pressing against your mind, testing your defenses, looking for cracks. And then, abruptly, he withdraws. Steps back. The pressure vanishes. No, he says, almost to himself. Not yet. Perhaps never. You are curious. But not exceptional. And the Lich King has little use for the merely curious. He returns to his throne, ascending the steps with the same unhurried grace, and settles back into his seat. You may go, he says, waving a hand. Continue your exploration. See what wonders the citadel holds. And if you survive long enough to reach the frozen throne. He pauses. Smiles. Tell him that Prince Valinor sends his regards. You do not need to be told twice. You turn and walk, not run, but walk quickly, toward the archway at the opposite end of the hall. You feel his eyes on your back the entire way. Feel the eyes of the blood servants, too, tracking your movement with their vacant stares. But no one stops you. No one pursues. And after a moment, you pass through the archway and into another corridor, and the Crimson Hall is behind you. You lean against the wall, breathing hard. Not from exertion. From the sheer tension of the encounter. From the effort of maintaining composure in the presence of something so old, so powerful, so utterly alien in its appetites and its amusements. You close your eyes. Take a slow breath. And when you open them again, the corridor ahead is empty and silent. Just stone and shadow and the ever-present hum of Saronite in the walls. You push away from the wall. And you continue. Because there is no going back. Only forward. Always forward. Deeper into the citadel. Closer to the throne. Part 5. The Frostwing Halls and the Ascent. You have walked through plague and blood. You have witnessed the laboratories where flesh is unmade and remade. You have stood before a vampire prince and felt the weight of his regard. And now, we move to the western wing. The coldest part of the citadel. The highest reaches before the final ascent. The domain of the Frost Wyms. Take a breath. Feel the air fill your lungs. Let your shoulders settle. Because this next part of our journey will require patience. Will require stillness. We are entering a place where the very concept of warmth has been forgotten. Where the air itself has frozen into something solid and sharp. The Frostwing Halls. Let us continue. The passage to the western wing. The corridor beyond the Crimson Hall is different from those you have walked before. It narrows. The walls close in, until the passage is only wide enough for two people to walk abreast. The ceiling lowers, pressing down, until you could reach up and touch it if you chose. The floor becomes uneven, no longer polished Saronite or marble, but rough stone, covered in a thin layer of frost that crunches beneath your feet with each step. And the temperature drops. You thought you understood cold. You thought the entrance hall was cold, the lower galleries were cold, the forge and the plague works were cold in their own ways. But this is different. This is not merely the absence of warmth. This is aggressive cold. Cold that has intent. Cold that reaches through your furs and your layers and your skin and settles into your bones like an infection. Your breath comes in short, shallow gasps. Each inhalation burns. Each exhalation creates clouds so thick you can barely see through them. Your fingers begin to numb inside your gloves. Your toes lose sensation inside your boots. And a part of your mind, the rational, survival-oriented part, begins to whisper that this is dangerous. That you should turn back. That no one is meant to walk this deep into winter and survive. But you do not turn back. You cannot. The corridor is too narrow to turn around easily, and besides, you have come too far. You are committed now to seeing this through. To reaching the end. To understanding what the Lich King has built in his frozen cathedral. So you continue forward. One step. Then another. Then another. The corridor seems to stretch on forever. And then, gradually, you become aware of a sound. Not the hum of Saronite, that has become such a constant presence that you barely notice it anymore. This is something else. Breathing. Deep, slow breathing. The sound of lungs the size of buildings expanding and contracting. The rush of air moving through passages larger than tunnels. And with each breath, a faint whistle, the sound of wind passing through gaps in ancient scales. You stop walking. Listen. The breathing comes from ahead. From the end of the corridor. From the chamber that waits beyond. And mixed with the breathing, another sound. The creak of leather. The scrape of claws on stone. The rustle of wings shifting in sleep. The Frost Wyms are here. And they are restless. The corridor opens. Suddenly, without warning, the narrow passage gives way to an enormous space, and you stumble forward, nearly losing your balance as the dimensions shift around you. The Frostwing Halls. This chamber is unlike any you have seen so far. It is a cavern. Not a constructed space, but a natural cavity within the glacier itself. Or perhaps carved by the Lich King using magic so powerful it simulated nature's patient work. The walls are ice. Pure, ancient ice, layered and stratified, showing centuries of accumulation. Blues and whites and greys, all blending together in swirls and patterns that seem to shift when you look at them too long. The ceiling, if you can call it that, is lost in darkness. Somewhere far above, you know there must be an opening, because you can see snow falling. Slow, gentle flakes that drift down through the enormous space, taking minutes to complete their descent, adding to the drifts that have accumulated on the floor. And the floor itself. The floor is covered in ice several feet thick. Smooth in some places, jagged in others, with crevasses that drop away into blue-black depths you cannot fathom. Scattered across this frozen landscape are formations, pillars of ice that rise like stalagmites, some as thin as spears, others as thick as ancient trees. They glow faintly from within, lit by some property of the ice itself, or perhaps by the magic that saturates every inch of this place. But the most striking feature of the chamber is not the ice or the snow or the impossible scale. It is the occupants. The Frost Wyms roost here. Dragons, once. Proud, ancient, powerful creatures who ruled the skies and hoarded knowledge and treasure in equal measure. But they fell, some in battle, some to age, some to treachery, and the Lich King's necromancers found their remains. Raised them. Bound their spirits back into their skeletal frames and commanded them to serve. And serve they do. There are dozens of them in this chamber. Some perch on the ice pillars, wings folded, heads resting on their claws, skeletal forms wreathed in frost. Others lie curled on the floor, partially buried in snow drifts, only the curve of a spine or the point of a wing visible. A few hang from the ceiling, or from ledges high above, suspended by their claws, upside down, like bats the size of houses. They are immense. Even collapsed, even sleeping, their size is difficult to comprehend. A single ribcage could serve as shelter for a dozen people. A skull, jaw hanging slack, is large enough that you could walk into its mouth and stand upright. The bones are not white, they have been stained blue-gray by the cold and by the magic that animates them, and frost clings to every surface, covering them in a layer of crystalline armor. You walk slowly into the chamber. Your footsteps are silent, muffled by the snow. You move between the pillars, giving the sleeping Wyms as wide a berth as possible. Their breathing continues, that deep, rhythmic sound that you can feel as much as hear, vibrating through the ice beneath your feet. And their eyes. Oh, their eyes. Even in sleep, they glow. Pale blue points of light in empty sockets, dim but never fully extinguished. And occasionally, one will flicker. One will brighten slightly, as if the creature is dreaming. As if some memory of flight, of fire, of freedom, passes through whatever remains of its consciousness. You wonder if they suffer. If some part of the dragon they once were is still trapped inside the animated skeleton, screaming silently, mourning the loss of scales and flesh and the ability to feel the sun on their wings. You do not know. And the citadel offers no answers. You pass beneath the shadow of a particularly large WY. It is perched on a pillar at least 50 feet tall, its body coiled around the ice, wings partially spread as if it froze mid-stretch and never completed the motion. Its head is turned in your direction, and for a moment, you think it is awake. That it is watching you. But no. The eyes are dim. The jaw hangs slack. It is asleep, or whatever passes for sleep in the undead. You hurry past, not quite running but moving faster than you have allowed yourself to move in this place of enforced stillness. And as you do, the WY arm shifts. Just slightly. A single claw scrapes across ice, producing a sound like nails on glass, high and sharp and endless. The wing trembles. The head lifts, just an inch, just enough that the angle changes, and then settles back into place. The breathing continues. The eyes dim further. And you are past it, moving deeper into the chamber, heart pounding, breath coming fast. At the far end of the Frostwing halls, there is a rise. Not a wall or a gate, but a natural slope in the ice, ascending at a steep angle toward a dark opening high above. And at the base of this slope, standing sentinel, is a single figure. Not a Frost WY arm. Something smaller. More humanoid. You approach cautiously. As you draw closer, details resolve. It is a woman. Or the form of a woman, at least. Tall and slender, dressed in armor that seems to be made of ice itself, or perhaps it is ice, grown over her body in plates and scales, mimicking the appearance of conventional plate mail. Her skin is blue-white, the color of glacial ice seen from within. Her hair is long and pale, streaming behind her as if blown by a constant wind you cannot feel. And her eyes, like the WYM's, glow with that cold, blue light. She is a Valkyr, one of the Lich King's chosen. A shield maiden plucked from the halls of Valhalla itself, or the Vrykul equivalent, and bound into his service. She serves as guardian, as psychopomp, as harvester of souls deemed worthy of undeath. She does not move as you approach, does not speak. She simply watches. Her gaze is not hostile, not welcoming either. It is neutral, evaluating. She is determining whether you have the right to pass, whether you have earned the privilege of ascending further. You stop before her, and for a long moment, nothing happens. The only sound is the breathing of the frost WYMS behind you, and the soft whisper of falling snow, and your own heartbeat, loud in your ears. And then, slowly, she inclines her head. Just once. A gesture of acknowledgement. Of permission. She steps aside, gliding, not walking, and gestures toward the slope with one hand. You may pass. You do not hesitate. You do not thank her, it would be meaningless here, in this place where mortal courtesy holds no weight. You simply begin to climb. The ascent to the frozen throne. The slope is steep. Steeper than it appeared from below. The ice is slick, and there are no handholds, no ropes, no assistance of any kind. You climb on hands and knees, using the texture of the ice to find purchase, your gloves and boots scraping and sliding as you haul yourself upward. The temperature continues to drop. You did not think it possible. You thought you had already experienced the coldest the Citadel had to offer. But you were wrong. With each foot of elevation gained, the cold intensifies. Your lungs labor. Your vision begins to narrow at the edges. Frost forms on your eyelashes, and you have to blink constantly to keep them from freezing shut. Below, the frostwing halls recede into shadow. You glance back once and see the frost WMs, small now, their glowing eyes like scattered stars in the darkness. And beyond them, lost in distance and shadow, the rest of the Citadel. The halls you walked. The chambers you explored. All of it impossibly far below. You are climbing toward the sky. Toward the peak. Toward the place where mortal air gives way to something thinner and colder and utterly unforgiving. The slope becomes a tunnel. The ice closes in above you, forming a passage that winds upward through the glacier. There is no light here, save for the faint glow of the ice itself, that same internal luminescence you noticed in the pillars below. It is barely enough to see by, but it is enough. You crawl. There is no room to stand. The tunnel is perhaps 4 feet high, just large enough to move through on hands and knees. The walls press close on either side. Above, the ice groans and creaks, settling under its own weight, and small fragments rain down, bouncing off your shoulders and back. You try not to think about how much ice is above you. How many tons? How deep you are inside the glacier. Instead, you focus on moving. One hand forward. One knee forward. Again. And again. The tunnel climbs at an unrelenting angle. Your muscles burn. Your breath comes in ragged gasps. And the cold is everywhere now, so complete that you can no longer feel your extremities. Your hands move automatically, beyond your conscious control, and you can only hope they are still gripping, still pulling you forward. Time loses meaning. You might have been climbing for minutes. Or hours. Or days. There is only the tunnel, and the ice, and the slow, painful progress upward. And then, the tunnel opens. You emerge onto a platform. Not inside the glacier anymore. Outside. You are standing on a ledge carved from ice and stone, jutting from the side of the Citadel's highest spire. The platform is circular, perhaps 50 feet in diameter, and utterly exposed to the elements. The wind here is ferocious. It tears at your clothing, rips the breath from your lungs, howls in your ears with a voice that might be the mountain itself screaming. You stagger, nearly blown from your feet, and drop to a crouch to avoid being hurled over the edge. Because there is an edge. The platform has no railing. No wall. No protection whatsoever. On three sides, it simply ends, dropping away into emptiness. And below, far, far below, you can see the landscape of Northrend spread out like a map. The Dragonblight. The Borean Tundra. The jagged peaks of the Storm Peaks in the distance. All rendered tiny by altitude. All insignificant. And above. You tilt your head back and look up. The sky is black. Not the black of night, this is midday, or what passes for midday in this place, but black nonetheless. A void. The stars are visible, impossibly bright, scattered across the darkness like shards of ice catching light. And the air is so thin that each breath provides almost no oxygen. Your head swims. Your vision doubles. You are higher than you have ever been. Higher than most mortals ever go. You are at the summit, and there, ahead of you, at the far end of the platform, rising into the black sky, is the final structure. The Frozen Throne. It is not a throne in the traditional sense. It is a monument. A formation of ice and Saronite, twisted together, rising in a spiral toward the heavens. At its base, steps, wide, flat, covered in snow that the wind cannot clear. And at its apex, perhaps 100 feet above the platform, a seat. The throne itself. Carved from a single piece of dark ice, its back shaped like the points of a crown, its arms resting places for gauntleted hands, its surface etched with runes that glow with a pale, sickly light. You cannot see if anyone sits upon it. The distance is too great. The angle is too steep. And the wind carries snow and ice crystals that obscure details, turning everything above into a swirling white-gray blur. But you feel it. The presence. The weight of consciousness pressing down on the entire citadel, radiating from that seat of power like heat from a forge. The Lich King is there. Has always been there. Waiting. Watching. You stand. The wind pushes against you, trying to force you back, but you lean into it. You take one step forward. Then another. Toward the stairs. Toward the throne. Your legs barely support you. The altitude, the cold, the sheer exhaustion of the climb, all of it presses down, demanding that you stop. That you rest. That you lie down in the snow and let sleep take you. But you do not stop. Because you have come too far. Because the citadel has called you, and you have answered. Because some part of you, perhaps the same part that looked into the mirror in the hall of reflection, needs to see. Needs to know. Needs to stand at the summit and bear witness. You reach the base of the stairs. Place your hand on the ice railing. And you begin to climb. 1 step. The wind howls. 2 steps. The stars burn overhead, cold and distant and utterly uncaring. 3 steps. Your vision narrows to a tunnel. You can see only the next step. Only the next handhold. 4 steps. 5. 10. 20. And then, you reach the top. You stand on the final platform, at the very pinnacle of Icecrown Citadel, at the highest point in all of Northrend. And before you, close enough now to see clearly despite the wind and snow, is the Frozen Throne. Empty. The throne is empty. No figure sits there. No armored form. No glowing eyes. No presence except the throne itself, ancient, patient, eternal. And you understand. The Lich King is not here because the Lich King is everywhere. In the walls. In the ice. In the very air you breathe. He is the citadel. He is the wind. He is the cold that has followed you from the entrance hall to this final peak. And he is in you. Has been in you since the moment you saw the silhouette on the horizon. Since the moment you chose to approach. Since the moment you crossed the threshold and began to walk his halls. You are not separate from this place. You never were. You stand before the empty throne. The wind dies. The snow stops. And in the sudden, absolute silence, you hear a voice. Not spoken aloud. Not heard with ears. A voice that rises from deep within your own mind, in your own internal voice, but carrying words that are not yours. You have seen. Now, rest.